I think it cut me off towards the end of the last video, so I didn't get to finish my thought. But I was talking about Basil. Basil Hallward. You'll hear him being called Hallward or Basil from time to time in the story. But in the first chapter, when he's the main character, um, you see him struggling to avoid answering the question that his friend Henry, Lord Henry, has on why does he not want to share this masterpiece of Dorian if it is so amazing. And Basil, there is one quote here that stuck out to me that I feel like shares a little bit about Dorian, or not Dorian, Oscar Wilde's own background. So again, Dorian Gray was actually a novella that was influenced by a lot of his own personal life and his relationship to, and Oscar Wilde's relationship to his own sexuality. So, Oscar Wilde, he actually had a romantic affair with another man while he was alive, and in Victorian England that was seen as a no-no. So, it definitely ruined his career in the sense that people didn't accept him or saw his writing in a new light, in a different light where it was not seen with in a positive view by a lot of Victorians. So I feel like in this quote that I'm about to read to you, it goes to show a little bit of it's sort of hinting on that consequence of what happens when someone knows more about your personal life aside from your works. So it says, when Harry is trying to ask Basil again, why aren't you sharing your art with the public eye, he says, "Harry," said Basil, looking him straight in the face, "every portrait that is painted with feeling is a portrait of the artist, not of the sitter. The sitter is merely the accident, the occasion. It is not he who is revealed by the painter. It is rather the painter who, on the colored canvas, reveals himself. The reason I will not exhibit this picture is that I am afraid that I have shown with it the secret of my own soul." So this can technically be taken in multiple ways. I'm sure that Wilde wasn't just talking about his own personal matters, because it's basically saying that just like many other mediums, such as writing or storytelling or music, a lot of creators will share a vulnerable part of themselves or an inner part of themselves with the public eye, and a lot of the times it's not even intentional, right? It's something that is molded from them. So and if it's some form of art, then it makes a lot of sense that that creator is going to share a little bit of their personality within that art. So with Oscar Wilde, he definitely did that in the medium of writing. He wrote a lot of male characters with personalities that I feel like deviate away from what we see as typically masculine. He doesn't mind blending in some, I guess, atypically effeminate features along with masculine features in his male characters. For example, you'll see in chapter 3, there's a scene where Dorian actually bursts out in tears. And there's also a lot of other things about Dorian himself that you can say are of typically effeminate characteristics, such as him being bashful or afraid when Henry sneaks up on him at the garden. Like, if you remember, he was looking at the flowers, and he gets a little startled by Henry coming from behind, and he's like, "I'm not a schoolboy or a little girl, why am I getting so afraid?" But it's like, what I like about that, though, is it kind of it diverts itself away from the norm of what oftentimes Victorian men were sometimes seen as. Not that he's the only author who's done this before. In fact, Victorians, there were certain things that Victorian men did do that were considered acceptable at the time, despite sometimes not being seen as a masculine feature to today's world. So, for example, being very affectionate with your male peers as a male is actually oftentimes considered healthy and a good thing during that time period. So there are certain things that like aren't specific only to Oscar Wilde. Um, Another thing that I found really interesting in this chapter, um, there was a scene where, in the same chapter that I just read, where Basil was talking about the consequences of being too beautiful or too intelligent. Um, oh yeah, I found it. So this was where Henry was accusing Basil of saying he was beautiful enough to depict himself in the artwork of Dorian, but then Basil corrects him. He actually says, "You don't understand me, Harry. Of course I am not like him. I know that perfectly well. Indeed, I should be sorry to look like him." You shrug your shoulders? I am telling you the truth. There is a fatality about all physical and intellectual distinction, the sort of fatality that seems to dog through history the faltering steps of kings. It is better not to be different from one's fellows. The ugly and the stupid have the best of it in this world. They can sit quietly and gape at the play. If they know nothing of the victory, they are at least spared the knowledge of defeat. They live as we all should live, undisturbed, indifferent, and without disquiet. They neither bring ruin upon others nor ever receive it from alien hands. Your rank and wealth, Harry, my brains, such as they are, my fame, whatever it may be worth, Dorian Gray's good looks, we will all suffer for what the gods have given us, suffer terribly. I found that such an interesting passage because a lot of times I feel like we see as someone who holds natural beauty or someone who is naturally very intelligent as a positive thing. We oftentimes see that as a privilege to be able to have intellect or to be able to have attractiveness. But he turns it over on its head. He says that this can actually be seen as a threat to society or a threat to ourselves when we deviate from the norm by too much. When someone is too intelligent or too beautiful, when someone has too much of a positive quality, it can actually be associated with negative consequences. And there's a lot of different ways that can happen. For example, you could be exploited for your beauty. You could only be seen for your good looks, but then everything else is not given the same acknowledgement that it deserves. Or if you're intelligent, sometimes you might not be capable of turning off that part of your brain that always wants to look at the depths of everything, that wants to analyze and take apart everything. And sometimes that can be a very isolating feeling to those who have that gift but can't always share it with the world. So I feel like it's very interesting that Oscar Wilde is kind of turning these ideas over on their heads. It makes a lot of sense, though, when you put it into perspective. So I think that's it for now. That was a little bit more, honestly, of chapter 1 now that I'm thinking about it, but I still think there's a lot more to dissect from every single chapter, so that's only a snippet of it. I can still do another video later of chapter 2 and 3 as well. But yeah, I hope that helps. Alright, see you later.